The San Francisco-born star says he's mad about British comics like John Cleese, Peter Sellers, and Frankie Boyle. And he'll get a chance to see if his routine works on a British audience when he plays venues in London, Glasgow, Chester, Birmingham and Leeds. The former Saturday Night Late star is returning to the stage after starring in a string of Hollywood movies including Grown Ups, You Don't Mess with the Zohan, The Waterboy, Judge Dredd, Hot Chick, The Animal and Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. He's also been busy fronting the Netflix sitcom Real Rob, where he plays himself alongside real-life wife Patricia and daughter Miranda. I caught up with the 54-year-old as he prepared to leave Los Angeles for the UK. Q. What can we expect from your stand-up? A. If I had to rename the show it would be called The Ugly American Tour. Potentially you get more unfiltered news from good comedians than you get from the news. People are looking for some sort of shorthand to interpret what's happening in the world. All the news seems to be less and less objective and more the US and them mentality. So it's like, you figure it out for us and give us something we can laugh at that has some sort of moral barometer. Or in my case, a lack of a moral barometer. Q. Is the a political show? A. There's politics in everything. If you go to Starbucks, if you go to Harrods, the perfume counter has its politics. There's politics on the road, there's politics in the drinking water. To try to avoid politics is to avoid the power structures that are part of everyday life. There is a power struggle happening at all times. The fact the sexual power structure is now being questioned is a good thing. Is it an overreaction to what's happening? I like to talk about that. That's interesting. If you're not an artist dealing with what's happening at the time, it's not an art that's relevant. Stand-up is a newish art form. It started as an American art form, like jazz. I guess comedic talking is word jazz. It's not like a book, it's for fun. And for the people who are good at it, it's really fun. I look at it as a form of exercise. I want them to laugh really hard about stuff and challenge their thinking. And also laugh their ass off. Q. Was it difficult getting back into stand-up? A. Really difficult. It's like recovering from a car crash. Your body has to get used to being back on stage again. It took me a couple of years to learn how to move on stage and it took me a few more years to work out what I wanted to do. What would be interesting for me to do and what would be interesting for the audience and to realize the difference. You always have to remember you are there to entertain. And I do think the art form is cresting in a very interesting place. Chris Rock's latest show is very, very good. Very honest. Q. Are you a fan of British comedy? A. I'm very taken with English humor. When I did a movie in England, The Most Loathed, by the UK anyway, Judge Dredd, there was not one person on that crew who didn't have an incredible sense of humor. In England, you learn to crawl. You learn to walk, then you start to form jokes. It's almost like a defense mechanism. In America you can go a whole day talking to somebody and they won't come up with one funny thing. In England, you can't go 2 minutes without somebody trying to make a joke. It's a wonderful quality that I really admire. I love the Irish comedian Dylan Moran. He is almost a poet. His comedy is beautiful and it's really funny. And I love Frankie Boyle. That's shocking, waking people out of their slumber. That's wonderful. I like the style of both. Q. Did you get any advice from your friends? A. I remember talking to Louis C.K. before he went into his masturbation-caused hiatus. he said, just to make sure the logic is there. The thing about Monty Python was their humor was silly, and to me Monty Python is the high watermark of comedy. There's no question about it. John Cleese told me silly is king, and there is this absurdist progression, but it's all logical. It's beautiful to see where it goes. Sometimes you see where it could go, but they keep surprising you. That's the stuff you laugh at the hardest. Hopefully, my stuff will be as approachable for an English audience as it is in America. Q. Do you tackle Donald Trump? A. You can watch Donald Trump jokes 5 nights a week. Is that interesting? I tried to attack the people attacking him. That's more interesting. The idea that Democrats and the liberal-minded have just discovered that there's inequality and racism in America. They predicted Donald Trump in the early 90s, not him personally, but globalism as it was coming into place. There were going to be results. Poverty was going to increase, manufacture bases were going to be diminished. People weren't going to have the same spending power, you were going to have an angry population. On the left, there were going to be attacks on freedoms, they were going to control speech, intolerance in the guise of tolerance. On the right you were going to have authoritarian rule. They were predicting anti-immigrant sentiment in the early 90s. I remember thinking, wow, that would be weird if that happened. But everything they said has come true. Q. What was the idea behind Real Rob? A. I don't want to quote John Cleese too many times, but I flew to John Cleese to ask him questions, and he was kind enough to spend time with me. He said the difference between British and American situation comedies is that with American shows it's always about the quip. In British shows the humor is in the situation. I would like to think my humor is more situational, Real Rob more like a British comedy. I tried to make it like a 30-minute teleplay for the BBC. Q. Do you watch many comedy movies? A. I don't watch too much anymore. I like the personal movies. Truly, madly, deeply, if I could star in one movie that came close to that. Or Cinema Paradiso or Il Postino. The movies that are really funny have that situational quality. When I was younger I wanted to make a movie like The Return of the Pink Panther. Deuce Bigalow and The Animal were my attempts at making Peter Sellers movies. Q. Does your comedy get different as you get older? A. Of course. I'm not in the same place I was in my 20s and 30s where I was trying to prove myself. I'm not doing these shows for the money. I'm playing small venues to see how it goes and create a good experience for the people who are there. And to see it if it works. I love Chris Rock, I think he's one of the comedic geniuses of our time, but I'm not interested in playing the O2. I just don't know if that's going to be as rewarding. I want to perform in an intimate venue that's personal and memorable for the audience. Rob kicks off the UK leg of his European tour at London's Leicester Square Theatre on March 14th. Then he moves to Glasgow, Oranmore on March 15th, Birmingham Asylum on March 16th, Chester, the Live Rooms on March 17th, and finishes at the Wardrobe, Leeds on March 18th.